The polar bear population has grown from about 5,000 animals in the 1950s to about 30,000 today. According to the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, or IUCN, the hunting of polar bears is based on quotas that are set annually in conjunction with the local Inuit, taking into account the best scientific and traditional ecological standards. Only around 20% of the total allowable harvest quota goes to the guest hunters from foreign countries and provinces such as the European Union, Russia, non-Inuit Canada, and the United States. The revenues from this sport hunting benefit the communities. There are calls for an end to the hunting of polar bears, and similar demands by Greenpeace in the 1980s and later in 2008 with the EU ban on seal fur, with the goal of ending the seal hunt, led to more than a 75% decline in revenue from seal fur sales from the Inuit, reaching a loss of 92% of revenue in certain areas, which harmed many Inuit livelihoods. Greenpeace has since had to issue an apology. Use and trade of the polar bear is allowed in Canada, Alaska, Greenland, and Russia. Both subsistence hunting and recreational hunting are practiced in Canada, while subsistence hunting is carried out in Alaska, Greenland, and Russia. Hunting polar bears in Norway is prohibited. The principal use of polar bears is for subsistence purposes, including the consumption of meat, use of hides for clothing, and small-scale handicrafts. Whole hides may be used for subsistence needs, kept as trophies, or sold on open markets. The financial return from the sale of legally taken polar bear hides can provide important income for local people in Canada and Greenland. Sport hunting of polar bears only occurs in Canada and must be guided by local Inuit hunters. While communities can decide whether or not to allow sport hunts, these hunts must be accounted for within the annual quota assigned to a community. Sport hunts are not additive to the quota. Sport hunting can be a major source of income for remote settlements because the financial return from the hunt greatly exceeds that of the hide value. This often provides an important infusion into local, cash-limited economies. Dr. Victoria Kutuk-Bushman of the University of Alaska is quoted saying, "I think the attempt to ban polar bear hunting is misguided. Any ban that makes it more difficult for indigenous peoples to practice their way of life violates the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. Polar bear hunting is highly regulated and occurs primarily in subpopulations that are either stable or growing. Conservation measures should be based on sound science and indigenous knowledge, but not on a perceived moral high ground." Colonial and moral notions of conservation would still harm indigenous communities in the Arctic. The World Wildlife Fund, or WWF, also agrees with this view. Dr. Sibylle Kletzendorf, expert of the WWF, concludes in her personal blog, "For me, it goes without saying that we at WWF respect the traditional hunting rights of indigenous and local people. Hunting must be carried out in an ecologically sustainable way. The long-term survival of the species must not be at risk. Scientific data shows that Inuit hunting does not pose a threat to bear survival. This is reviewed regularly." The Inuit hunt polar bears, walruses, and seals for their meat and skins, which they traditionally use for clothing. A polar bear is considered a special delicacy with which the elderly are first treated out of respect and appreciation. The Inuit generate 80% of their urgently needed protein supply from hunting, fishing, and whaling. To replace hunting and fishing sustainably and ecologically justifiable is impossible. A supply from the supermarket is not presentable. David Akiagok, Minister of the Environment for the government of Nunavut, is quoted saying the following, "Hunting provides livelihoods for our communities and sustains our traditions. Our government is committed to sustainable wildlife management and conservation in Nunavut. We are ensuring that appropriate measures are in place to ensure that future generations can pass on their ancestral knowledge and skills." If an Inuit harvests a polar bear, he can earn between $1,000 to $2,000 US for a hide. However, if an Inuit community markets the harvest to international guests, the revenue is between $30,000 to $40,000 US, plus the allowance to the hunting guide, which is between $6,000 to $8,000 US, and the income that comes in for accommodation and food. Unlike photo tourists, hunting guests do not arrive by icebreakers or charter flights, but use planes that fly to the respective hunting areas for the delivery of mail, medicines, or goods. In the 2021 and 2022 hunting season, 575 bears have been harvested, or 1.9% of the global population. Hunting also protects Inuit from danger. Because bears see human garbage as an easy source of food, there is inevitably a clash between humans and bears. If a bear encounters Inuit sled dogs and even kills the lead dog, it means a great loss for the entire community because it eliminates a team for transportation, fishing, and hunting. Bears break into food depots and destroy vital supplies. Fatal attacks on humans occur repeatedly. Self-defense is also a guaranteed right of the Inuit. It also should be noted that any deaths caused by human-wildlife conflict are included in the total allowable harvest, and therefore is not additive to the total offtake of polar bears in a year. The negative impact from hunting import bans have been seen in a study focusing on 3 polar bear subpopulations that were subject to hunting tourism before the hunting import bans set by the United States in 2008. The study found that the number of bears hunted did not decrease, as subsistence hunting increased while guided hunting decreased. The only impact is that it removed revenue from multiple Inuit communities and disrupted the cultural economy. With all this information presented, I am not asking that anyone automatically support hunting tourism. I simply ask that we examine all of the facts and come to a better understanding of the complex world that is wildlife conservation. The Inuit are among the best stewards of the polar bear, and their livelihoods must be taken into consideration when discussing the topic of polar bear management and conservation.